have 7 books here that I believe have been instrumental in my journey as an entrepreneur, as an investor, and as somebody attempting to build their wealth, that I would recommend reading if you want to take control of your finances, of your money, of your wealth creation. So let's dive in. All right, first one, and I'm getting this one out of the way first because it was on my property investment book recommendation list, but it is Rich Dad Poor Dad. Again, this one has been beaten to death, and there's a reason why it's so popular, and that is because it's a fantastic fundamental read. I recommend that anyone who wants to take control of their finances, of their money, read this book. You will not regret it. You may not even agree with everything, but I think everyone can agree that the core fundamental message of the book is strong and is only going to serve you well over time, which is basically buy assets, but still read the book because it's definitely a classic when it comes to finance books, to money books. And I think everyone needs to have that core fundamental understanding of why it's so important to buy assets. The Richest Man in Babylon. This is an awesome little read. You could read this in a day. You could read this in an afternoon. I actually read this book one summer. It was a really nice day. I sat outside all day and read this book, read it in a day. This book is written as a fictional story, which is why I quite like it. It's a little bit different, but the messages throughout this book are fantastic. My 2 key takeaways are that investing is key, but the most important thing that you can invest in is yourself and your own knowledge. Unshakable by Tony Robbins. This book was the book that convinced me to invest into the stock market, but more importantly, convinced me to invest into diversified index funds. And that is still a core pillar of my investing strategy. Every single month, I have a direct debit to an account that invests into a global index fund. Read the book and you will see exactly why that is a fantastic thing to do and why you probably don't need to hire a financial advisor. It will explain all in this book. Great read, obviously, Tony Robbins. If you don't know who he is, you've probably been living under a rock, but yeah, fantastic book. And he talked to Ray Dalio a lot to write this book. And if you know Ray Dalio, then you know he is a guy who knows a thing or two. Die with Zero. Bit of a morbid title, but definitely recommend reading this. And this is kind of like almost an anti-investment book. When we're thinking about finance and investing, all too often we forget that we still need to live life. We still are going to die one day. And if we die with millions in the bank, there's really not much point in that. So spend your money, and more importantly, spend your money on experiences. My key takeaway from this book was that when all is said and done, the only thing that you really have in those last moments are your memories. Let that hit home, read this book. And amongst all these smart financial decisions you can make, remember, don't forget that life is also for living. The oldest book in this selection of books, and it is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Warren Buffett raves about this book. Benjamin Graham was his mentor, and basically the key takeaway that I got from this book was that if you're investing into anything, first and foremost, don't get carried away with hype. We've all seen what happens time and time again when we get carried away with hype, whatever's going on in the marketplace. But also in particular, if you're investing into a stock, essentially what you're doing is buying a business. You need to think of it that way. And then you need to analyze that business. You need to look at the cash flows. You need to look at their debt levels. You need to look at everything about that business as if it was your own business, because essentially you are becoming an owner of that business. And it's a pretty dense read, and there's many sections of this. Again, one of my favorite parts of this book is the concept of Mr. Market. So I'll leave that one for you to read, but essentially it explains really nicely the concept of the market and why it can be so irrational at times and how to navigate that. There's a fantastic passage in this book. Pick it up, read it. You will find it challenging, I think. It's slightly dense. It's slightly long, as you can see. It's a big old book. And especially the second half, when it gets into security analysis, it's quite hard going. Even if you read the first half of this book, you're doing really well. But I promise that there is some gold to be found throughout this, and it's a fundamental book on investing. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And I recommend that anybody and everybody should read this if they want to actually understand what the true value of money is. And for me, the biggest takeaway from this book was that money is purely a tool for freedom. The key reason why you should earn money is for freedom. So you can do what you want, where you want, with who you want, whenever you want. That is the ultimate goal of becoming financially free and making money. Try not to let money rule your life and get caught up in keeping up with the Joneses. Fantastic book, definitely recommend reading. Price of Money. For me, this one was actually really interesting because it kind of goes a little bit more high level in regards to the economy, in regards to how interest rates work, how inflation affects your money, in regards to how governments think and feel about money, and in particular, the huge levels of debt that their money has. And one of the key things actually that I took away from this book is that if I can try and kind of align myself with what the government are doing in terms of their financial position, doesn't mean I need to get into loads of debt. But for example, if you have debt on a property, and then you consider the amount of trillions that the UK, US government have in debt, you can kind of see, okay, so maybe it's in their best interests to have a little bit of inflation going to erode that debt a little bit. So if you have debt on a property, let's say you have 200 grand on your mortgage, over 30 years, because of inflation, actually what's going to happen is that debt's going to erode. So it was a really good eye-opener actually in regards to thinking about debt, thinking about good debt, bad debt, how to invest your money, how to spend your money, and just getting a high level understanding of how the economy actually works was super valuable for me. So I hope that was helpful. 7 books on money, on finances, on creating wealth that have had a huge impact on me and have incredibly helped me to just think more wisely about money, about finance, and about how to invest, how to spend, and how to manage my finances. So I hope that was helpful. Until next time, all the best and take care.